Nissan sales are collapsing and they're literally shutting down production. Yes, when we saw the first half of 2024, Nissan had said and reported that they were down 99% of their profits. Back in May, we heard that dealers were being told by the manufacturer that they just should sell the cars at a loss. Would you believe BYD even overtook Honda and Nissan in terms of overall sales, and they're not even selling cars in North America? And even with products like the 2025 Nissan Leaf repriced at a small sticker price of $25,000 and change, they still can't sell vehicles. What's going on at Nissan? Well, 2023 and 2024 have been absolutely annihilating years for Nissan. As a matter of fact, their sales are down from 2024 referencing to 2023 by a whopping 70%.
Part of the problem is they didn't have enough interesting vehicles. They're going through that little bit of a lull right now, and while they promise many new models coming up here in the next couple of years, a brand new Rogue like this we're talking about now offers to be a $28,000 base MSRP, which is quite affordable, but the downhill trends, of course, with sales, new and used, means that a lot of people are struggling to buy, and they're not willing to throw in their hard-earned dollars down on Nissan or any other manufacturer for that matter.
All based on a report published by Automotive News. And an insider told us as well that 38% of the dealer network of 1,071 dealers are actually grossly hemorrhaging money. Yes, they're losing money at an alarming rate. Profitability is down by Nissan to the lowest levels we've seen in over 15 years. And unfortunately, the market share 5 years ago for Nissan was about 7.7% of the entire industry and has tanked down to 5.8% today. Things are so bad, in fact, that Nissan's preparing for the fact that they might be down 40,000 sales right up and through the end of the year. On top of it, Nissan's cutting production of two of their most popular models, the Nissan Rogue as well as the Frontier. And while the Rogue sales are down grossly, believe it or not, Frontier sales are up this year. So Nissan's telling a lot of their dealers that September, October looks like it's going to be lean months. They're saying by 40,000 units, you can actually expect to go bye-bye. And a lot of dealers are struggling selling the inventory that they currently have. And it doesn't take very long to see any Nissan dealership that you drive or walk through to see the mass amount of extra inventory they have sitting around. And there's virtually little to no foot traffic. Nobody's shopping, nobody's buying these products. And it's not for the sake of not trying. Nissan's been up in incentives. They're trying to pitch their products, sell them for pennies on the dollar, trying to motivate people with better interest rates, with cutting prices. And of course, their products are certainly competitive in terms of overall pricing when you look at the rest of the market, but nobody's buying these vehicles. So oddly enough, the two models that Nissan looks to cutting production on, the Frontier, which surprisingly enough is up 17.1% this year in terms of overall sales from last year, but the Rogue is sadly down 4.5% so far this year in 2024. So it begs the question, why are they cutting production on two of their most popular models? Well, it's because there's simply too much inventory. On top of all of these struggles, it also looks like Nissan's struggling with way too many dealer networks. There's way too many dealers in each particular city and jurisdiction, and now Nissan's looking at other ways to possibly cut some of the damage. Some of that might look like gobbling up or buying back some of the smaller dealers that are hemorrhaging or losing money and allowing the bigger dealerships to actually thrive. We've already said 38% of the dealers out there are losing money. So they might relook at some of these dealer networks and say, look, these ones are losing money. Why don't we shut you down? We'll buy you out. And that way, some of that foot traffic can move their way into the larger dealerships and help them actually thrive and sell more cars. So this is all devastating news, not just for buyers who can't get a deal. It's also devastating news for Nissan, who can't sell vehicles, at least without heavy incentives. But think about the people that are building these vehicles. There could be layoffs coming up because a lot of these plants are either being reduced or shut down entirely to limit the amount of production and output of some of these vehicles. For example, Nissan informed some of their suppliers that they were going to be cutting back at the Smyrna plants. Tennessee, Canton, Mississippi could all see some massive reductions in the products that are leaving those sites. It also shifted the Rogue production from 5 days down to 4 days. Obviously, there's going to be a reduction, and with that, there may be workers that actually are waving bye-bye. Sadly enough, we've seen a lot of this happen at Stellantis, where they're shutting down plants, laying off workers, and they just can't keep up. Obviously, there's no demand. The vehicles aren't being purchased, and the entire industry is in the real struggles right now. Serious dire straits for Nissan as they continue to see this downward spiraling in sales. But this is a common denominator. This is a common theme that we're seeing across the industry. We're seeing hemorrhaging sales. Of course, not enough sales and too much bloated inventory at Nissan, but Stellantis is feeling the burn too. Stellantis' feet are being held close to the fire by UAW, who are saying they're not owning up to their end of the bargain by, getting the Belvedere plant fired up. Of course, keeping a lot more workers working. On top of that, they were promised to actually produce or create more jobs for more workers on the assembly line, but that's not happening either. Nissan's struggles are just about as bad as what we're seeing over in Stellantis. So earlier this year in May, the manufacturer even told the dealers to sell their vehicles at a loss, because Nissan actually ballooned to 100 days supply of inventory. And with this fattening and ballooning of inventory, that just meant there's way too many product on the car lots that they weren't selling. So the ask was that they sell them at a loss. Now, since then, obviously, they've got that slightly under control, but with about 68 days supply of the industry average, and some of their closest competitors like Honda and Toyota being closer down to that 30-40 days supply, clearly Nissan tapping at 100 days supply meant they had too much inventory. And even with that said, they just weren't selling the vehicles. They weren't going out the door, and customers weren't having any interest in buying Nissan products. So they had to incentivize them aggressively just to sell a product, just to sell a car, an SUV, or even a truck. Nissan sales are in the tank. So internal experts are actually saying one of the other bigger issues is that they have way too many dealerships. So internal people are saying that we should expect or anticipate a reduction of at least 40% of the current dealership network just to get things under control. And to put this in perspective, Nissan actually has more dealerships than Hyundai, Kia, and Honda, pretty much almost combined. They have way too many dealers out there, and not enough products are going out to the customers. And this is part of the problem here as well. You have too many dealers losing money. So they're going to have to possibly look at shredding out some of those dealers, dismantling that, or just buying them out.
And the writing is on the wall. Unfortunately, Nissan's cutting the operating capital by 17% down to about 500 billion yen. Clearly a sign that things are trending in the wrong direction.
So sadly, Nissan, like many other manufacturers, including Stellantis, are starting to learn the hard way that the cost of living crisis is finally catching up, not just to suppliers, supply chain dealers, but more importantly, much more importantly, buyers. The consumers don't have the money. The consumer debt, they've got credit cards racked up that are paying off other debt. They've got student loans racking up. They've also got existing car loans. They're underwater in a lot of cases because the high prices that people were paying back in 21, 22, 23. Now, a lot of people find themselves underwater and can't afford to trade off or sell off. And on top of it, of course, you can't afford to buy a burger or eat these days because the cost of food is excessively high. Cost of living and rent and housing is rising at an alarming rate. And unfortunately, the reserves and, of course, Canada are holding their interest rates steady. Inflation's holding stable, but unemployment rate seems to climb. And the volatility of the political market may or may not have something to do with the future looks like in short term. But at the end of the day, people don't have the money. They don't have the cash or the reserves to possibly throw down on these new expensive vehicles. Whether you're buying a car or an SUV or a pickup truck, they're all too expensive and people are tapped out. They're finally worn out. They don't have the money. So definitely you want to check that out. Let me know what you think about that scenario. That's a cost of living crisis issue that a lot of people are faced with. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.